7th overall, and then was pretty much hooked with Colorado, being in the mountains and moving fast in the mountains. And so then spent a bunch of summers out there and finally moved there full time in 2018. And then we spent a year in Denver, or a year in Leadville together, Jimmy and I, and it started snowing on October 6th, the end of that first year. And I was like, I think we need to go down to the Front Range because I can't do 7 months of winter.
Yeah, man, it's harsh.
Yeah.
So, Ricky, we are live now on YouTube. Let everyone know where they could find you, direct them to all your socials, the gym, everything like that.
Yeah, man. So I've been living in Durango, Colorado for the last going on 5 years Christmas this year, right? So man, time flies. And I work right now currently I'm at CrossFit Durango. I'm a coach there. I'm practically full-time there. I don't do anything else. Most of what I do is personal training throughout the day. We're still a small enough gym that it's me and a client and I, like just us, right? Usually throughout the day. We do have open gym, but it's we're not that big. And so, we have our class times and we're still kind of old school gym where it used to be before now having open gym where we'd have a class and we close the gym and you have a class and you close the gym, people leave, right? But now that I'm there, I coach there all day. So I coach all the noon classes, a couple late morning and a couple early afternoons, but mostly personal training throughout the day there at CrossFit Durango. It's been awesome. They're great people. We have a great community. Right now, most of where I do a lot of my stuff is on Instagram. Ricky Jr. Frausto Fitness is where you can find me. Again, Ricky Jr. Frausto Fitness. I'm on Facebook and some other stuff, but that's mostly family stuff and things like that. So Instagram is a lot where I do a lot of my stuff and where people can follow me. Also, I have a website, durangofitness.com, that they can kind of catch up. That's where I do a lot of my kind of initial. If they either find me through there or I'll send that to them if I get contacted by somebody, so that at least in the meantime they can kind of read on some testimonials, a little bit about what I do and who I am and stuff like that. So that's a great place too. Kind of gives a little bit of background and things like that. But that's mostly where I do most of my business stuff, either that or obviously, um, just talking to them via email, things like that. I have a lot of online clients as well. So
All
yeah.
right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us and our guests. I know they'll all get to that. We like to let all our guests know kind of how we find them, give them a through line. And when Rich and I first started getting into CrossFit, we were both wrestlers. And when we found CrossFit, it felt like wrestling practice.
Yeah.
And we were having trouble as far as being little guys. And we saw a guy like you, we saw a guy like Chris Spieler, and we saw you guys killing it on that end of the CrossFit things. And I actually sent you an email at one point. Hey, Ricky, I'm a wrestler. What do you think I should do? And you told me, you said, hey, you should probably stop doing just CrossFit wads and get super strong. I didn't listen to you. It took me like 5 years to come around to, hey, I need to get strong. But I appreciate that, and that's kind of how we came to find you. So really want to get into the wrestling, and I know you used CrossFit with the University of Omaha wrestling team when you were there. So I guess the first thing I want to ask you is how you kind of came to CrossFit.
Uh, you know, it started, it's kind of funny. Those early stories, I think, of people, coming across something that was a lot tougher than they had anticipated. Maybe like you've heard of where it's almost like someone telling you your religion is wrong, right? And then you're just like, so then it kind of attracts you to finding more about. So basically, when I was about done with my eligibility at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and I was trying to kind of figure out. I was along the lines of exercise science and that stuff, but I really still hadn't any idea what I was going to, go into, my profession or and stuff like that. And I was coming to a close of my eligibility, and I almost went into cardiac rehab. Thank goodness I didn't, because that's not me at all. But I one of my friends, so I wanted to become a strength coach. I kind of started to talk about that mainly because while I was a wrestler and on our team, we didn't quite have that coach or that guidance, that leadership. We were appointed a strength coach, and that strength coach kind of didn't really, I mean, they knew what they were doing, but they didn't really have that kind of, that piece, that missing piece that's needed, particularly for each sport, right? Like, there is a lot of same things, tried and true, I think. But there's also a little bit of each sport, whether it's male, female, whether it's, upper body, lower body, there's just, it's a little different from sport to sport. And we didn't quite have that. And I think that's what kind of lit a fire under me to kind of go in that direction so that I could be that for our team. And so, I went in and I decided to say if I could follow someone, if I could, shadow, if I could walk in, watch some of the stuff. And they were a little off-putting, they weren't real receptive in the beginning, but they gave me a chance, right? And how they gave me a chance is what I did was I took, we used to have these drawers that we'd pull out and they would have our workout sheets that we would follow. We'd go grab them and then we would follow them and then we'd mark them off, put our weights, and there would be cycles at a time. And what I did was I took one of those and I sat down at a computer and I kind of looked at what they were doing and I wrote up my own 4-week cycle on a spreadsheet and I printed it off and I took it to them, and to show them how serious I was about this. And so when I did that, they kind of red marked it up all over and stuff, but it gave me an in to get, it gave me a foot in the door. And so I was able, because of that and that initiative, I was able to kind of get a little bit of a spot in the weight room. And I started working a little bit, a lot of cleaning, a lot of doing that kind of stuff. And our head strength coach, around that time, we got Division I hockey, being a Division II school. That was our bread and butter, right? And our coach had grown up. Our head strength coach had kind of, his whole career kind of had been working with hockey on the side a little bit. So it was a big thing for him. So when that came to be, he kind of started only focusing on them. And so we kind of, as GAs and, whatnot, volunteers, kind of got free run of what we wanted to do. And it kind of opened up things a little bit. And so because of that, I started to get more and more responsibility. And of course, knowing that I wanted to work with wrestling, I was able to start working with wrestling, and then eventually women's swimming and diving, a little bit of golf, a little bit of tennis here and there, and working with these individuals. And so during that time, as we got more and more, and I got more kind of experience, one of our GAs left because he had a child and a girlfriend, and he needed to provide, and he wasn't getting paid much, if anything at all. So he went and left and went to the public sector. And he was the one who somehow found CrossFit on the side. And he started doing some of this stuff with his clients. And so one time he started bringing them to the gym because we had more equipment than what they had in their kind of public personal training type studio. And one time he brought a client, took him through a workout. We weren't really paying attention. And he kind of left the workout sheet that he had used and kind of an outline of how he did it. It wasn't out of the ordinary to have some of this stuff that he was using exercise wise, but the way he did it, the way the flow did it. Listen, this way back then, we didn't do stuff like that. We literally would take people out on the field, warm them up. We would do some power stuff or speed stuff, and then we'd come back in the gym. And then we had a very precise way of working, whether it be Olympic lifts and then some strength training, lower body, maybe upper body, and then we'd work our way down to conditioning. So when we kind of just threw those cards in the air and let them land how they would land, it was kind of different. And so when I myself and one of my other friends who I opened CrossFit Omaha with, our first affiliate, tried that workout, it literally kicked the living daylights out of us. And so that was kind of how it was, just by chance. And so the way that was so the way we were doing things, let alone how much it impacted us metabolically, it was just something that we, and myself more specifically, kind of got, like I was more interested in it and I started to look more into it. And then my other friend who I opened CrossFit Omaha with, who is on staff, his name is Joe Westerland. He's been on the red shirt staff for a very, very long time. We kind of started to put more kind of marbles in that basket and looking more into it and doing those types of workouts. Before long, we were out in Santa Cruz doing our level 1 in 2017, or way much earlier than that. But we were our coaches, the people who led that, were Greg Glassman, Nicole, Dave Castro, Mark Ripito. Like those guys were all there leading our sessions. This was back in the day whenever that stuff still happened, right? So we had a great time, and I was able to win. We did like a heavy version of Helen, was one of our workouts for the level 1, and I won that. And so that was one of those things where, I was like, all right, I think I can maybe do something in this space. And that's kind of how it started. Long story short.
What were you one of the top 100 affiliates back then when Omaha opened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were, let me see what number we were. Oh man, I know for sure we were under 200.
Yeah.
But I would have to say, it wasn't, well, a good sign of that is that nowadays, and even not too long ago, you couldn't use major cities as your name, right? They would tell you, like, so whenever we wanted to be like a certain name, it had to be like associated with the city. But back then, anybody could grab anything, right, if it was available. So that's why we got CrossFit Omaha. And so now, like, when I moved to another one and it was CrossFit Vice, we couldn't name it like CrossFit Council Bluffs or Iowa or anything like that, because they wouldn't let us. So that shows you, how long ago this was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you were doing the strength stuff with the university, did you cross paths with Camaro or Tervel?
They were
No,
Carney,
but
weren't they?
yeah, that's Carney.
Oh,
But
they were Carney. Okay,
yeah,
I'm
that
sorry.
was Carney. But
I'm
we were
sorry.
like at the same time though. So when I was wrestling and towards the end of it, and then his career, my heavyweight was Les Sigmund.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was
Okay.
kind of around that time when I was a strength coach, when I was first starting out.
Gotcha. My mistake.
No worries.
And when you first started dabbling into the CrossFit, were you using just CrossFit with the team, or were you kind of experimenting, still using the strength stuff, still getting them strong? How did you kind of incorporate the CrossFit with the wrestling training and the strength training?
Um, you know, wrestling, even around my time, even that time, guys still had a little bit of a hang up with, resistance training. A lot of us, even myself included, growing up, most of our exposure to, what we would call dry land training for swimming, right, would be a lot of push-ups, pull-ups, like things like that, right? And so high rep, high, threshold. And so to kind of, for a lot of kids that I worked with, you know, this was kind of their first intro into organized resistance training. And a lot of them, it took some convincing, because they were never raised that way, and then they couldn't really make the connection of why it would be important for them, because a lot of those guys, those kids, it's just like anyone else. It's like, if I do 50 reps of something, I'm going to feel the burn, and so then I thus associate it working. When you do something like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 and it's a little heavier, you can't quite, you're first off, they're not going to go super heavy to begin with until you can get some experience. But they didn't quite associate this, why that would be working and stuff. So it took a little bit of, trust and working with them and meeting them where they're at. So I think CrossFit helped me in that sense, because they could see the value and how hard they were working in the gym, and they could kind of associate that a little bit more with their sport. And once I could kind of gain some of their trust, I could then take what we kind of started and then kind of tinker a little bit and pull some of that out and then find some weaknesses and attack those specifically, right? Especially lower body, because it was really tough for us to get them to understand how important building lower body strength was, because, you know, everything feels so upper body and moving around and stuff, but just building the trunk and getting them stronger in the trunk while showing them that they didn't necessarily have to gain weight, right? Or we could learn how to lose it properly, which I helped out a lot with too. So CrossFit was very instrumental in helping me build rapport, right? And them kind of, I even became the head. I was in charge of football too, and I started to work CrossFit into our football team too, way early on. And this was slightly before CrossFit football at the time, and then that kind of bled into it, and I was able to kind of, you know, take a little bit of guidance from them too. But yeah, so it really did help. But I didn't just use CrossFit. I used parts of it, and I really took parts that I needed, and I helped, you know, like create something that was a little bit more specific to these guys, and more specific to each one, right? Like the lighter weights versus the heavier weights and the middle weights. So that was, you know, and you know, limitations, whether it be mobility limitations, whether it be, you know, strength endurance limitations, pure strength, you know, absolute strength. Because most of them were relatively strong, but it was a little more like generally strong, a little more farm strong, right? And so taking some of that and developing it into something that was more well-rounded, you know, CrossFit definitely helped.
And I know hindsight is always 2020, but as you get older, as a man, as a trainer, you have different philosophies. You get a little bit more level-headed with things. Is there anything that you know now that you would do differently, given that opportunity?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think that, you know, there as athletes, you know, we're after the development of certain qualities, and understanding that there might be an easier, more suitable exercise to develop those qualities, and that sometimes there's a cost to technique that delays the development of that quality. And so when you get somebody, it wasn't like I didn't do that, you know, like completely just, you know, bought into CrossFit and did it their way, but I was still young, and I definitely, you know, forced that a little bit more. But I tell you what I did get, and spending that time with them and teaching them how to Olympic lift and teaching them how to do certain things properly, we may have lost out in developing those qualities, but they were the foundation of the culture that we built, and that we're moving forward. And that was probably the best thing going that route that I did, was building the culture of, hey, this is how we do it. And when you come in, if you either get on or you get off, right? And I had complete backing of Coach Mike Denney. He trusted me 100%, and so I was able to, you know, he let me take that care of that completely. But like I said, you know, to, you know, further explain is just like, you know, maybe I could have been doing a little bit more, you know, kettlebell stuff, jumping stuff, things like that, while teaching, you know, the Olympic lifts, if I wanted to go that route. But just to let other coaches know that you're not wrong in thinking that you can use, you know, simpler, less, you know, heavy technique things to develop qualities that the higher technique stuff do bring. It just comes at a cost, right? In terms of, you know, how long you have to instill that technique, that culture of wanting to learn and things like that. But other than that, I feel pretty good about, you know, my career and how it has kind of, you know, come through the years and stuff, if you will.
You bring up Coach Mike Denney, and he is a Division II coach and legend. University of Nebraska Omaha was a powerhouse, and then they didn't have a program. Were you there when the program was dropped?
I was still a strength coach, and this was obviously back to back, not, and then back to back, and that was that second run of back to back, where we might have even been three back to back to back, where they were just coming off that win that night, when the program got dropped. And so there's still a little there, there's still a lot of animosity there, towards the administration at the time, with Trev Alberts and all that stuff that went down. And a lot of people aren't happy about him leaving, NU for Texas A&M recently. It's it feels like a stab in the back again. But Coach Denney was fortunate to, it kind of sucked, but he was fortunate enough to, be hired on in a program built from the bottom up, at Maryville in St. Louis. And so, we were really happy for him, but man, I was there and it was tough. It was a tough time, for wrestling and football, because we both got dropped at that time, so for reasons still kind of unclear, but it is what it is.
Is there hope that there might be some way somehow that at least wrestling gets reinstated?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
They're far enough into this Division I thing now, and they're doing good. Basketball and volleyball have kind of really made some strides. They were always really good, but they're so much better now because obviously the access to athletes that maybe they wouldn't have had that being a Division II school. So I don't see it ever. The good thing is that we just recently, I wasn't able to attend, but we were, Trev was gone and that administration is gone and there's new administration, and they brought Coach Denney and our wrestling program back in, and gave him a nice solid farewell. And so there's that they healed a little bit. And they had a huge get together for our wrestling program at the Sat Field House where we used to wrestle. And and that was a long time coming, I think, and so now just to have some of those wounds start to heal a little bit, and that, Coach Denney and that administration or that school, because he was there for so long, kind of coming back together a little bit is really cool. And just really happy to see that. And now that he's retired, he can he can have that monkey off his back, if you will. So that's a good thing. Everyone's kind of gone that was there at the time. So
all right. So I know you're busy with coaching and training your clients and at the gym now, but is there a part of you that kind of misses that, still being working with the wrestling and a wrestling team and strength and conditioning and maybe even doing some mat stuff? Do you miss that, or does that itch get scratched at all in Durango?
That's a good question, man. I've actually come across that thought process many times, like throughout, it's not so much now, but I do wonder, had I, so to kind of give you a little bit of background on that, like there were a few opportunities for me to continue as a strength conditioning coach at the college level. I put out some resumes at this is a long time ago now, but I actually was flown out to FIU at one point, and interviewed for their football strength conditioning, a long time. This was like way back when, but they flew me out to Miami and I got to sit in front of all the coaches, because I wasn't just going to be football. I was going to be, but I would kind of have some control in the department and stuff. And went through that whole process. And the big thing for me of not taking that job was mostly like culture and weather, right? For me, being from the Midwest and even from Texas, it was just outside of like what I was looking for at the time. And so even though I was offered the job, I didn't take it. And I think now looking back, I'm like, man, what would have happened had I gone down that route, instead of where I'm at. But I have thought, if it didn't work out, or if I decided to change, it's always something that I could do, because I really did love, the collegiate strength conditioning, working in a weight room like that and leading young kids, and, introducing a lot of them especially in Nebraska. There's a lot of farm, there's a lot of, and there's not a lot. These days are a little different. All schools have high schools have strength conditioning coaches, at various different expertise levels, but nonetheless, they're at least working that, isn't just, you got to be in the weight room. So I think it could have been a cool thing, but I do get the opportunity here and there to work with athletes. I'm gonna try. Obviously, our high school here, our lone high school, we have our lone athletics high school, Durango High School. I try to help out, and I'm gonna try next year to kind of volunteer on the team. Provide another little body to get out there and maybe wrestle with the lightweights, and kind of do that. Maybe not all the time, but I definitely know some people now. And so hopefully I'm able to kind of, pay back some of that in terms of helping out and seeing if we can't help our kids get a little better and stuff like that. So I think that'll be cool for me if I can do that, along the side of, but I really like what I'm doing now, and I really like
Yeah.
working with older adults or people who, are just not really, well versed to strength training and stuff. So introducing that to them and getting them. So
Right on. Now, we talked a little bit offline before we started, but you do have a son who is a cross country and track and field runner at the University of Pittsburgh. Curious, did he wrestle at all? Did that kind of break your heart that if he didn't? And then also, were you instrumental in sort of his development on the strength and conditioning side, or did you let the coaches kind of handle that stuff?
he did. His first sport was wrestling.
Okay,
Uh,
right on.
he did really good. He was took him a little while to kind of get the hang of it, as it does for most of us, but he took to it really well, and he started to win some tournaments and whatnot. But he started to stretch a little bit, right? And I think that he lost a little bit of interest in that, and kind of just that kind of whole being taller a little bit, and for his weight, he was still pretty lean, pretty thin. So he started to explore a little bit more and doing other things, and he moved to football, played football for a little bit. Then they started to hit harder, and he didn't like that, so he moved on to baseball. And baseball was his true love. Like he started to play on some select teams. He started to get really good, and he had kind of a bad experience when we were living in Omaha when he went to high school. He went to Omaha North, and it wasn't a bad experience, like he was treated bad or anything, but it was more or less like they didn't have a lot of kids that played and came out. So, but they had enough that they could create like 1.5 teams, right? Varsity, JV. And so he would travel a lot with varsity and then not get to play at all. And it just didn't really sit right with him. And so he decided to run, because he was already doing that a little bit too in middle school. And whenever, he started doing good in high school, he stuck with it. And that became who he was and what he was, and especially cross country. And so he took that and ran with it, and he did all his own recruiting. He reached out to people because he was doing really good here. Luckily, we moved to Durango, and that really helped his resume. Running against the Front Range and going up top and stuff. But he kind of reached out, and all he had in his thing was that he wanted to run Power 5, Division 1. So he kept searching and looking and doing all this stuff, and so he ended up at Pittsburgh, which he absolutely loved his trip there, and he still loves being out there. But yeah, as it pertains to his strength conditioning, a little bit, but not really. I
Mhm.
kind of let him do his own thing, and I kind of let his coaches do that and run that. But now, as he's a sophomore now, and he's starting to get a little more injured. They're running 80 to 100 miles a week, sometimes. And so he's long, and he's about, I'm just to give you a little bit of perspective, I'm about 5'5.5", and he's almost 5'10", so he's pretty tall. And he's pretty, he's pretty slender too. Great for running, long legs. But he runs so much that he's starting to lose, from my eyes, some of his mobility, right? Because he lives in such a limited space, with his ankles, flexion, extension, and his hips. So and he's kind of went through 2 coaches now. He went through a coach that was a little bit more into strength training, to one now that is a little like more into bands and core work, that kind of
Mhm.
So I talked to him a little bit about squatting and getting back into squatting and trying to get into some deep squatting so that he can regain some of that mobility, you know, and also build some bone density to try to avert some of those injuries that he's getting. Luckily, he hasn't had any stress fractures, but he's gotten, you know, 2 reactions that have kept him out. And so we're you know, he asked his coach about it, and so I'm pretty happy that, you know, he's taken some initiative to kind of, you know, take the advice that I've given him and now get into that weight room and get a bar on his back, you know, and start, you know, not he doesn't have to worry about how deep, but just or how heavy in the
Yeah.
beginning, but just deep, you know, really working through some range of motion and trying to build that lower half a little bit. So I'm starting now to get into it. He's a little more mature now, and you know, and is a little bit more open to listening to his dad. But yeah, man.
Right on. Curious, one other follow up there, Ricky. When he was in high school in Durango, was the bulk or were more of his running on softer surfaces and on trails?
You know, yes and no.
Yeah.
He did a, you know, the good thing about him, even if I compare him to myself, you know, growing up as an athlete, it took a little bit longer for me to mature enough to know the work that I had to put in to get the results that I was looking for. You know, I was a little bit more, you know, laid back and a little bit more, you know, it just slow to learn that process. And for him, it wasn't. You know, he from a very young age, he knew how to put in what he wanted to get out of it on his own. And we never, as parents, had to really tell him. He was always out running, getting his miles in, doing things, finding people to run with, you know, using Strava to find people when we would travel to run with and stuff. And so always out there, always out there. So that what I'm getting to is that he would do a lot of road running too.
Right.
Um, because you know we have a lot of, you know, elevation changes and stuff like that, but definitely it is a little different now. He probably does, um, you know, it probably was kind of an impact, you know, and more mileage than he had ever run, right? But you know, I'm surprised he hasn't gotten hurt more, actually, to tell you the truth, because they run so much. But he's doing well. He's doing well.
Right on.
So, Ricky, you had mentioned your first CrossFit seminar being out in Santa Cruz with kind of the all-star cast.
Yeah,
And if I'm correct, you competed in the 2008 games, right? As an individual, and then at later on you competed on the team side of things, right?
correct.
Yeah, and CrossFit Omaha, but back when Rich and I were getting into it, was a powerhouse at the time. So I'm kind of curious to what your thoughts are on kind of the evolution of CrossFit and kind of what your journey was as far as, you know, Rich and I, when we first got into CrossFit, we were full bore. And then, you know, 2012, 2013, we were kind of like, all right, we want to go back to our sports and kind of use what we learned for our sports because this is getting a little bit too big. So I'm just kind of curious what your kind of journey has been.
I think that's a little similar. If I'm, you know, being honest. So I competed. We missed 2007 by like maybe a week or so signing up. Right? It was me and Libby. If so, Joe's now wife, Libby DeBase, who was back. She was pretty big back then too. You know, and we missed signing up for 2007 the first year by a week or so. And then we almost missed signing up for 2008, to be honest, again. But we were able to make it out there. And so we competed individually in 2008 and 2009. And then we went team 10 and 11. And then we missed 12 by like maybe like sixth or seventh place when they took top five, you know. And then that was kind of where we started to tail in, and the sport started to really take off, and kind of outside of what full-time employees could muster in terms of training, right? So most of our team, anyways. So it just didn't make sense, you know, because they had jobs and whatnot. But so that little window of time was really cool and was great. And I came in at a time where I could use my wrestling and my experience competing, and do really well against who I was competing against. The thing was, is as the time kind of went on, and I didn't have much at that time. I needed more exposure to certain things, right? And I didn't, I could kind of, fall back on just my prowess, so to speak, and my ability to adapt. And so I didn't, and at that time there wasn't a lot of guidance either, right? It was just people training themselves and whatnot. So, but it was an amazing time, and I enjoyed every second of it, and going out and compete and being, on videos on CrossFit.com and all that great stuff. But towards the end of that, it became more about the affiliate, and it became more about my people, and then from there, it became more about like me just kind of using CrossFit for my fitness a little bit more, but also, dipping my toes into running a little bit, dipping my toes into some more bodybuilding and changing things up. But just playing around with that stuff. And even with like my clients, my personal training clients, rarely do I use, well, let's put it this way. So CrossFit is constantly very functional movement at high intensity, right? So I would say when we work with clients, we have probably the functional movement in there, and we have to some degree the intensity part, but it's a little less varied, right? A little less varied, a little more, rotation through the same kind of patterns of movement and teaching them. But I still enjoy teaching classes and bringing all my experiences and this new, crop of people, whether they're younger, older, and giving them strategies and teaching them how to lift properly and demanding great movement, and just learning how to put the right things on the pedestal instead of the wrong things, so that they look after that. So that's kind of where my evolution has kind of moved to. I did the open though, right? Like I didn't sign up for it, but I did it. We had Friday Night Lights, and being at CrossFit Durango, I'm trying to grow that up again with we just got some new owners. And the owners we had they're still with us. They're still coaching. But moving into this new ownership, trying to grow the community aspect even more, and trying to get back into that kind of stuff, making the open about everything but the scores, right? Like, just participation and all these different things. So I still enjoy dabbling. I still enjoy doing, CrossFit in here, but I've definitely taken the stuff that I've needed and, and used it for my own fitness, as opposed to just straight up, pure CrossFit.
All right. And I'm sure we'll get back onto the CrossFit topic, but one thing you had mentioned, you like the private training, you like training some elder folks, getting them moving, and going through some of your content. I see you're a big proponent of brisk walks.
Yeah,
And
man.
that is something that is right up my alley. Like Rich and I, we were raised as runners, but I'm bow-legged, and when I run on flat ground, I get hurt. So I walk a lot, and I've been trying to pick up the pace with my walk because I'm kind of like a slow poke if I'm not focused on how fast I'm walking. So I just kind of want you to get into that as far as brisk walks and how that can help people.
I think the biggest thing is, my initially with that kind of direction and kind of leading people in that direction is anybody can do it, right? Almost anybody can do it. Let's put it that way, right? Almost, because there are some that, have, need something even before that. But for most of us, it's free, right? We do it anyways to get from place to place and from room to room and all kinds of stuff. And I think it's just that ease is a great way for people to gateway themselves into further fitness of any sort, right? And I just deal with, I always think of my parents. I think of, other people similar to my parents who maybe, weren't always exposed to fitness the way I'm exposed to it. What I would say, like the privilege, of, I can just work out whenever I want. I don't have anything holding me back. It's something that I have very high on my priority list. It's a big part of my mental health and my, my physical health and stuff, but not everyone always can see it that way. And so walking was a great way for me to kind of break into that it's such an easy way for us to improve health. It's such an easy way for us to begin a journey, right? To then let it snowball into something bigger if they want it, right? But there's always progression from it. And so I just try to get that message out and that word out that if anything, walk. But if you can walk, walk fast, right? Because the benefits of it, from all kinds of different avenues is immense, and there's lots of research to back it up. Maybe not specifically, but in a broad sense. And so I just try to get people to understand that if you can get out and be intentional with walking, that the payback is pretty remarkable. And I have lots of friends. I have lots of friends that I went to high school with. I have friends that I've, like I sometimes, they may not have access to lifting. They may not be interested in lifting, but have told me how walking has impacted them positively, right? Getting out there and trying to get better at walking, trying to improve their pacing at walking, trying to improve their distance, their time walking, things like that. And that's just cool stuff, man. I appreciate, the hearing that, from people I know and people I don't know or don't keep in contact with as much. I just think it's an important endeavor that people can take on at any time in their life, really.
Yeah, I always tell people whether it's getting to the gym or going for a run or even going for a walk, the hardest part is getting your shoes on and getting out the door.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I completely agree. And I just think, for a lot of people, and if I can just keep saying it over and over, saying it over and over, that, we can normalize that, whenever you don't get to the gym or whenever you don't feel like doing a run, if you just get out on the walk, and do it, there it's just like anything, sometimes I would always try to tell people another avenue is like, sometimes I would go to the gym and I'd start warming up and doing some good stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? That was good. And I just leave, and I would just be like, I just got the warm up in and I feel good about that. And I did something. I'm just trying to get people to understand that that's good enough. That's good enough because it can lead to more things, right? And eventually we want them to delve deeper into fitness and doing more things and experimenting with themselves and trying out new things. But it's got to start somewhere. And for most people, the lowest obstacle, right, is the best avenue, direction that they can go. And so I think walking is huge, huge. And then,
Yeah.
like continuing to throw in that little bit of brisk or fast or 3 miles per hour, don't just walk if you can. If you have any, say in the matter, try to push it a little bit, because that can really get your heart rate up and feel good. And if
Yeah.
you're a big time lifter, right, it's a great way to lessen, additional impact of hunger, right? Like, so if you're not, if you're trying to watch, you're not trying to get bigger, but you want to get stronger, walking's a great way to not, catabolize that what you're doing in the gym, right? And also help you with not overeating, like running would, or a lot of these other stuff that are a little bit more higher intensity. Yeah, so there's a lot of good things in all fronts.
Yeah. And one of the things we used to do, getting ready for cross country and run is we used to use the telephone poles and kind of doing like, all right, from telephone pole to telephone pole, that section is a sprint, then a cool down or a jog, get to the next one. So you can kind of do the same thing with walking. Like you don't have to say, all right, I'm going to go briskly walk for 3 miles just starting out. It's like, all right, get a warm up in, and then let's briskly walk to that telephone pole. Then we'll calm down, we'll regroup with our breathing, and then you can kind of turn it into almost like a brisk interval walk session.
Exactly, man. That's cool. That's exactly, the kinds of things that, I want people to know too, because, you can play around with that kind of stuff and change things up, and it doesn't have to be, another thing we used to do, obviously, is you could ruck, right? Just grab a
Yep.
backpack and throw some books in there, carry some weights, right? If you have access to a treadmill, or at least, even better is, something like a non-motorized treadmill, curved treadmill,
Hmm.
carrying a couple dumbbells. So it does, obviously you feel a little bit more confident on that. But these are all things that I do, in warm-ups, even with just clients that I work with, because I can slowly but surely get them to a point where they can start, having a little bit of a stride. and doing a little bit of running, which they never thought that they'd be able to do. So, that's a win, and just starting from walking, right? So it's good stuff, man.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah, and to your point too about the overeating, I can use that as an indicator as far as maybe I feel like I ate enough, but I'm still kind of just sitting in the house and I'm looking for what to eat. I know if I can go out the door and I can get a walk in, I'm gonna kind of suppress that hunger. And by the time I get moving and get going to the walk, I'm not really that hungry anymore. And I use it as the indicator of if I can get out the door after a meal, I didn't overeat because I can still go for a walk and move. Whereas if I overate, I feel like I need someone to push me and roll me down the street because I'm so full.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. We were this past weekend we were in Moab, right? We went to Moab, and on we spent all day on Saturday hiking arches and stuff. But on Sunday morning, we had a huge breakfast, right? And we were planning to go and just drive home because we were trying to think, man, I got some work to do. I got a program for some clients and all this stuff. It's only about a 2.5 hour drive, but this was around 10 or 11 o'clock, and we decided to stop and go and hike up in town. And this was the same thing. It's one of those things where it's like one of the best decisions we made because we'd have just sat in the car the whole way after a huge breakfast. And so being able to get back out there and kind of hike for a little bit, a lot of elevation change. It just feels good, man. It feels great. It helps get blood flowing. It starts the digestion process, and you just feel good about it. So I'm kind of the same way when it comes to like in the house and doing that kind of stuff too. Always asking my wife, let's go for a walk. Let's get out there. Let's do it. And usually we have weather that cooperates, so it's even in the winter. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as, walks being a real big tip that you use for people to kind of get them in the shape and just kind of navigate throughout their day and keep motivated, do you have any other kind of I don't want to call it a hack, but any other kind of tips that you use with your clients to kind of get them moving or exercises that you do throughout the day or anything like that?
Well, I mean, I think the big thing is like with people that I don't work with and that I'm trying to kind of get into being more fit or developing a journey of walking to be more fit. I try to promote a lot of machine use. I try to get people to understand that you know when you don't have to work, the idea is just to stimulate, right? Like some growth, right? Some a little bit of failure while lifting, and to do it safely, right? A lot of times you need someone guiding you, a coach, someone who has experience doing that. But with machines, you can kind of bypass that a little bit, right? And so like when I even talk to my mom or my dad, there's a lot of anytime fitnesses around, that where you just use a key card to get in, and they have a good kind of circuit set up. And I always like just even if it's just one time through the whole thing, and you just kind of start light and then make it a kind of a build some momentum of going there again and again, even if it's only one time a week, 2 times a week, if you can get in there and just use machines, I'm a big proponent of that because again, it's about building momentum. It's about taking one thing and letting it with consistency turn into another thing, right? And I think that's, if you're afraid of going to a CrossFit gym, because sometimes people will say, I got to get, like more fit before I can try that out. And we all know that that's not true in the slightest, right? Like CrossFit communities are amazing and welcoming, and they're so awesome at getting in there. But there are still a lot of people that just they're not sure if they can trust someone. They don't feel comfortable in their own skin and how they look. And you're still dealing with groups of people being in that class, right? And sometimes that's not always the right way for people, even though it can be for anyone, right? It's not for everyone. And so I think if they can just kind of go on their own little thing and just build some momentum. And I think machines and walking are a great starting place for most people, and you just run through the leg extension, the leg curl, the shoulder press, the chest press, whatever it is, it could be the lat pull down or whatever, the seated row is usually a machine that they have in a circuit setting. Yeah, and or stair stepper, right? Stair stepping is amazing as well. Those are like my low, I think like low teaching, low learning, easy to get into, off the couch type stuff, right? Those are the things that I try to promote the most, right? And try to get, burn the stigma of like machines not being as good as, like free weights and whatnot, because in the end, the grand scheme of things is, you were at one place that was not doing anything, and now you're in a place that's doing something. And if it turns into free weights, awesome. And if it doesn't, then, it's about being there for the ones you love, and trying to have a great quality of life as long as you want it to be. Things like that. So, those are my kind of things that I talk a lot more about than just jumping into a CrossFit class if that's not your thing, which is cool. I mean, I don't want to, say it's not, because I really think that, especially like in certain communities, man, people would succeed because they would have a community to be held accountable to some degree. But it does take a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts to walk into a gym and then trust that gym to take care of you, to not harm you, which I really think that in this day and age compared to in previous day and ages, early CrossFit, where it's like, just go do it. There's no scaling, all this stuff, that coaches have grown a lot, right? And have come a long ways, but it still takes an immense amount of guts. And so I just want them to know, if they want to do it on their own, they can do it on their own. And start easy, start walking. If they can use a watch to help, guide their steps or their heart rates or whatever, in order to kind of help guide them in terms of, their pace. They can do 1 day a week of strength training, using machines if it makes it easier for them. Then that would be, they probably get in a few weeks' time with some consistency, a few months' time, they'd probably move into a new tax bracket in terms of fitness, right? Easily. And that's what I'm about. That's what I'm about. So
Love it. Powerful. I always tell people, that that anxiety, that feeling you have in your stomach when you walk through that door.
yeah, man.
I had the same thing when I walked in, so you're
Ah,
not alone. I just kept coming back, and then also took the coursework and stuff to help me be a better coach, and now I'm here presenting it to you. But I had to walk through that door just like everybody else did, and it scared the crap out of me the first time I went into a CrossFit gym.
yeah, and if I can add to that, I think from another perspective, when it comes to a CrossFit gym, I think that we as coaches need to do we need to continue to evolve and develop our people skills, so that when people do visit, we immediately introduce ourselves. We, ask them what their name is. If they're visiting, get into the habit of saying, are there any limitations that you have? Are there any injuries you're dealing with? Hey, everyone, this is so and so. Like, breaking, being better at that can make that in itself is what drives, if you want to be a gym that lasts for a long time, that right there. And I come from old school Glassman. I come from, if your bathrooms aren't clean, things like that, like little things. It's, and I just, I try my best to do that, even though that's not my, like, it's not in my space. I still want the gym to look good, and I want people to feel welcome. And if I'm being truly honest, I'm not always great at that. I'm not by trade, in my adult years an extrovert. I've kind of moved a little bit more into being an introvert, um, as I've gotten older. And so it's something I have to work at too. But I do work at it, and I think it's just a very important piece in terms of being, you're the lead person, you're the person that they are going to talk to first, see first. And so being open and soft, and not hands in your pockets, and talking to people and welcoming them, we can get more people in our gyms that need us more than people that don't really need us. They could, or they're gonna enjoy us, and it's a privilege for them. But they would probably be, if the gym closed tomorrow, right? They would be okay, right? But there are a lot of other people that need our help, and that's kind of my expertise has been, and that's where I've kind of gone, and my involvement has been more like working with people that you're either kind of bridging that gap between post-injury physical therapy into like, okay, I can't afford it anymore, right? Or my insurance won't cover it anymore. And you can't just jump right into like, what you were doing. There's got to be something there. So I work with people like that a lot too. ACLs, things, shoulders, things like that. But the other part is really trying to work with people that, just have never been in the fitness realm, right? Like people who are, and or who went through a tough time through COVID, right? Went through divorces, went through losses, went through immense weight gain, went through, all kinds of changes in their lives, and try to work with those people and try to get them back on track and feeling good about themselves and building confidence and strong about themselves, and just in a better mental space. So those are kind of my areas that I've been working with, uh, and it's been awesome, man. It's been really cool. I've been blessed for sure.
Ricky, you just hit it on the head. Rich and I, because of this podcast, we have the ability to talk to some really awesome people. And the one thing we talk about across the board, whether it be people who own CrossFit or people who are red shirts, the really good ones never meet a stranger. When they hop on here, you walk in their gym, it's like they've known you your whole life, even though it's the first time you're meeting them. And that's a good coach, right? That's the person that makes you want to keep on coming back into that gym. And you've said it a couple times in this conversation, the community aspect of things, right? And obviously, we want to keep people safe and we just don't want to throw anything at certain people. But I really think if you get a good community, you could have people doing almost anything to a certain extent with fitness, as long as that community is encouraging and it's giving that people that kind of dose of that morale and making them want to go there. You can kind of turn the corner on any situation in your life if you have the right people around you.
Absolutely. I think it goes much further than just expectations. It goes into, as a coach, I also have to teach my current members how to be members to other people, right? Like you have to talk about that stuff. And I do. Like I said, I coach a couple of, 9 a.m.s, a couple 4:30s, but I coach all the noon classes. So they see me every day, right? I'm their coach. I'm the one who teaches them, who is growing their fitness, who is showing them how to, constantly hitting on, how to do this, how to do that, but one of the things that we do discuss from time to time is that you've got to be who you want to, you as a person walking in seeing, right? And I've been to my fair share of gyms, and you just kind of like that low-key person walking in, and you judge a lot of things by how they treat you and how coaches treat you, and whether it's, is there someone that immediately talks to you, welcomes you, tells you, use this, feel free, blah blah blah, or is it more like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm lucky I have owned a gym and coach at a gym, and I know, the outs and ins. But I think more coaches in the CrossFit space need to also teach their members how to be members, how to, that these are the people you're going to spend 5 hours if you come every day of the week, right? 5 hours a day with, and so that's a large part of your life, especially for those that have been there for a while. And we do have some that come every day, and we have some that come 3 times a week, but they're now friends, and they talk about things, and they talk about skiing, and they talk about children. And I was like, and now, just because you feel comfortable with these people, you gotta try and do that with people who come in and visit. You gotta, because whether we get a lot of tourists and we get a lot of people that, we're the only now actual affiliate in town, there's a non-profit one, I think, it's a business inside of a business, I think, still, but we're the only one that's an actual affiliate. So we're the only one on the map, the finder, right? The affiliate finder. So we get a lot that way. And a lot of people repeat that, come in from Texas or wherever to come skiing, obviously, and during certain times of the year. So it's remembering those people, right? When they come back, it's trying to remember their names as best as possible, right? It's having our mainstays, our longest members, our longest tenured members, reaching out and being like, I know you, and not being afraid of saying, I know you, you visited before. What's your name again? Not being afraid of that, right? Like that happens. We forget. But I think just the fact that you're talking to them and they feel like they're a part of the team, I think it's huge. It's very huge. And so I try to do my best to lead by example, but like I said, I'm a little bit more introvert in my age. I got a birthday coming up on Thursday, turning 46. So in
happy birthday.
Happy
thank you.
birthday, sir.
And this last few, decade or so, I've kind of closed in a little bit more, but it's a work. It's something that I have to work at every day. But I have like a passion for that stuff, right? When it comes to that, and I think that, one non-inviting thing, can mean the difference between someone, not ever showing up again and someone being your biggest vocal representative. Right. And so, yeah. And it's luckily we have a good little nice community at our gym, and it's only going to get better now, because we're going to really try as coaches and as ownership to have more events and to get more people involved, and it's okay to bring your families and, stuff like that. So it's cool stuff, man.
Well, when we get back out to Colorado, we're going to come visit you. So
Absolutely. You're welcome anytime.
absolutely.
Rich, do you have anything for Ricky before we get in the final four?
No, I was going to ask about the community, but I think he just covered everything in that last little tidbit right there in terms of building a good community and little things like remembering names as best as you can. And like you said, I can remember I did an on-ramp for someone and then was gone for like 2 months, came back, and the first person I saw when I came back was that person. And I'm, me, Jim, I'm not necessarily always great with people's names, but for some reason, like the universe reminded me what that guy's name was. I said, "Hey, Eric, how's it going?" And he was like, "You remembered my name?" And that guy's still at that gym to this day. So it's
That's
little
it.
things like that,
Yeah.
so powerful.
And making it, just a little bit, like taking a step further. It's like when I don't see you, I send a text if I know you that well, right? Like I do. Not everyone's like that, but there are a few that come all the time. And when I don't see them for whatever reason, I just shoot a short text out, and I'm just like, hey, hope everything's all right. You weren't in the gym today, because it's different when they're not there, right? And or another great way is like, when can I expect you back? Like, when they're leaving, hey, when are you coming back? Like, put a little accountability there, and they're more likely to come. So
Yeah,
little things like that, I think, go a long way.
no doubt,
Yeah.
no doubt.
And I think another point you made, Ricky, and it was kind of indirect. You didn't say it or anything, but you coach a 12 o'clock class all the time. You don't coach the other classes. And I think that's a really good thing about CrossFit is it might be the same workout, but every class is not the same because it depends on who coaches it and the energy they're bringing to that. And I think that's a good thing, and it can be a hindrance to some gyms too. But I also think that that's a good thing because it allows you to kind of, yes, I have to teach these movements and get it done in the same amount of time, but I can put my own personal stamp on it.
Yeah, I think, and even the bigger thing with that, if you do get the chance to do that, is that you're gonna get a few from other classes, but you're gonna have the majority of the same people because of work or whatever. It becomes like group personal training, because I now know them so well. I can hold them accountable in various ways. I can be like, I don't know if that's the right way for you. I don't, and I can come with something, right? Like if it changed every day, like you don't have that same continuity. And sometimes that same power of being of getting that point across doesn't always fly the same because they don't always see you. And so maybe you've gotten that much better, right? Or maybe you've gotten worse, or you haven't been here for a while and you're just jumping in for someone. But I have the opportunity to really like know everyone and how they move and what their limitations are and what they're working on and what their goals are. And I'm able to, you know, really dive in deep and put my hands in that and teach them and talk to them personally. Like, dude, like they're the only one. Like I'm like, I work with you all the time. And it's like, you know, why don't we go a little heavier today? Because like, for example, today we did the cheap, which is a crowd favorite. 3 power cleans, 6 push-ups, 9 air squats, right? AMRAP 3 minutes, 5 rounds with a minute rest in between. And it's one of those low rep numbers with some easier accessible filler movements that people can really kind of push themselves a little bit. And so my big goal is like making sure people, hey, don't stop doing power cleans. We're not doing ground to shoulder. We're doing power cleans. Power cleans look different than ground to shoulder. And so we talk about that, we teach that, and we make sure that you know, that I hold them accountable to that. But you know, it's like now I got like Bruce over here, and Bruce, you know, when was the last time you did this? I think it was me and you, right? What weight did you use that when he was like 95, right? Bruce is 65 plus. And so his go-to is women's RX. It's perfect because it matches up well with, you know, the masters in his age group. So today it's like, all right, 95, why don't we try, you know, 135, 115, 105. You know, I put 135 in his head because I know he's capable of it, but it might not be great for this workout, but I know he's capable of using that weight. So I put that in his head, and then I work myself down a little bit, you know, and then he uses 105 for the workout. And he might not have used 105 had I not been there, you know, in terms of talking to him personally about it because I know him. And I got another person I talk about, doesn't got a very great front rack position. He's an older guy. And we talked a little bit about earlier in our interview here, a podcast, that where sometimes things come at a cost, right? Technique and whatnot. So this guy wants to do hang power cleans because he doesn't want to feel left out, even though he might be able to do something like, you know, kettlebell swing into a catch and a squat. And that is a clean by nature. And it's the same process with less technique. And he probably start getting more out of that right now than having to use a PVC pipe or a 15-pound bar for months at a time just to learn. So there comes the cost benefit. And so I try to get that point across that you're not being left out. You're actually working more with a class when you change to a kettlebell than you would have been using a barbell that is so light, right? And you have the rack position that's not very good, and you're still, so, you know, that's the benefit I get of working Monday through Friday with a noon class too, is I get to bring that because I know them and they can't get out. They can't hide behind anything, and I can hold them accountable to their limitations and or, you know, their current fitness level. So that's a wonderful thing, man, that not all gyms get to have. And so I'm lucky that I don't have another job in the middle of the day, that I get to work at the gym nonstop, and I get to see these people every day. Even though I'm not always in a great mood, I try to bring that other realm to it, which is, you know, getting my hands dirty and trying to make sure that, you know, someone leaves every day with something new.
Well, they're very fortunate at 12 o'clock to have you for sure.
Yeah, man, I love it. It's great.
That's awesome.
Appreciate that, you know, the opportunity to be able to do what I do. So
Yeah, I appreciate the insight too, right? Of working with every population and kind of the mindset that you bring to that. That goes a long way. So really appreciate that. Ricky, we have 4 questions that we ask our guests at the end of every podcast. However, we get a wrestler or CrossFitter on here, we might throw in 1 or 2 before that. So kind of a CrossFit one I have for you is, do you have a favorite CrossFit WOD?
oh man, probably not as much as I used to, but when I was doing it a lot, I would be, if you gave me the opportunity to pick and choose and stuff, I would probably be a little bit on the heavier side, right? Not too heavy, but heavier side, right? Couplet, right? Maybe triplet, right? And it probably somewhere in that kind of 8 to 12 range, right? Like burners, right? Those are, I was never a big, as small, as little as I am, you know, and wrestling, I wrestled 133 in college. You would think that I'd want to do 20 minutes and maybe, like,
Cindy.
yeah, Cindy or any of those, which I did my fair share of, and I would try to do really good at those, but I was more on the trying to prove myself all the time, being the smaller guy. And so, doing, heavy thrusters and heavy squat cleans. And, we'd be thrusters being around that 135 to 155, cleans being around that 205 to 225, like with, moderate middle of the pack reps, in that 8 to 12, that was my go-to. And then, doing some skill work, doing some things like, like some bar muscle ups and handstand push-ups and things like that. But I really enjoyed the barbell being a little heavier, and then throwing in some burpees, stuff like that. So that was kind of my thing. So, I think in my heyday, I did a couple times, like I did, what's the workout? Oh, so terrible. But the 100 thrusters with the 5 burpees on the minute. That was
Kelso?
Kelso. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that
Sounds
takes a lot.
horrible.
That was a CrossFit football one, wasn't it?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
for me, I would try that a couple different times, different ways. One way being no strategy, just try to get the reps done, right? Be smart, don't fall off too much, and then other times, how can I game it, right? And so, like, I would, the different ways of doing that. But that was kind of, in my heyday, a workout that I would like. It was a little longer, but it was in that kind of wheelhouse of having that, heavier thruster, do some burpees. So I'd probably say something like that, right? Somewhere along those lines.
Right on.
All right, Ricky, first Final Four I have for you. Are you a coffee drinker?
I am, but I've recently moved to decaf, so I am getting older. Yeah. Yeah. So what my wife was, she, just to kind of expand on it, she really wanted to stop drinking coffee for the sake of just drinking coffee. She really liked it at times, but she felt like when she stopped, drinking coffee, that things started to, be less blurry for her, a little less cloudy. She could think better, so it's kind of holding her back. So I just jumped on that train with her, and now I'm, we don't have much anymore, but I almost have it every day. It's just decaf.
Right
How
on.
do you take your decaf?
Mostly black.
All right.
Mostly black. Sometimes a little bit of that. We do have some Chobani. They have some little bit of different kind of flavors.
Mhm.
I haven't really found one that I truly like. I think sweet cream is pretty good, but mostly black.
Ricky, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Pray, man. I pray every day. That's one thing. I pray for the people around me. I pray for my wife. I pray for my kids. I pray for the people that I pray a lot for myself in showing up as a person that is, like, there to serve. Like, I want to be someone that can serve and show compassion. I pray for courage to show compassion. I pray for the courage to follow through with opportunities that present themselves to help and serve other people. Because sometimes that can be scary as well. And so I pray for the strength and courage to act on those opportunities. But I try to pray every day. So that's a huge part of my life. And so I'm not the same person if I don't.
Ricky, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I two things. I listen to a lot of like red dirt country. A lot of Texas, Oklahoma country. Obviously some of the more mainstream is like Zach Bryan, but you can go deeper into like, non stars like that. I like that, a lot of that kind of country, a lot of just kind of good old American red dirt country. I dig that stuff. And I do listen to a lot of sports podcasts. I'm a huge Texas Longhorns fan. So I listen to a lot of football. I'm a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. So those, a lot of like just the off season and following through that kind of stuff. My fandom is kind of up there. So I do listen to a lot of that stuff, but I also listen to, some fitness podcasts and stuff. I like to listen to, like Dr. Lane Norton. I like to listen to a little bit of Huberman. I like to listen to, there's a few out there that I won't maybe listen to the entire podcast because there's sometimes can be super long, like 4 hours. But I do try to catch up on some certain things if it interests me and stuff like that.
Right on. What's your go-to favorite red dirt country?
Man, right now, I mean, I like Jason Isbell.
Okay.
I like him a lot, so I'll listen to him. I'm gonna go. I got tickets to go see Zach Bryan in Denver coming up.
Nice.
So I do like him. I'm gonna go with a couple of high school buddies. Coming up in I think maybe June or July. So I'm pretty excited about that. I listen to, trying to think of some that I play a lot of. I like Flatland Calvary.
Okay.
Um, like there's quite a bit, man. I like to go off the deep end there sometimes, and in most I like to work out to that music. That kind of gets me going because I don't get to listen to that music during class times because that's not the PR, kind of. So yeah, it's kind of my go-to.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. We always love to find new music on here with our guests.
Absolutely, man. I just dig that kind of. Yeah, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah. I spent some time in Oklahoma City, so I got a good introduction into country music and red dirt country and all that stuff. So I do appreciate it now.
Yeah, it's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That and
Great.
probably 90s rap.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
No
That's my
doubt.
era, my high school era.
I hear
Is
you.
yeah, 90s rap.
Ricky, last one we have for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures? It could be a food related item. Maybe, Colorado is a land of craft beers. Maybe you have a favorite craft beer. We talked a little bit about music. Maybe you're a Swiftie at heart.
Um,
He's a
I,
Chiefs fan.
I'm Chiefs fan. Yeah,
That's
there you go.
true.
Fits right in. Man, I mean, I do. Yeah, I mean, I'm just a, I think that another message when it comes to like walking and resistance training on machines is just not restriction, right? Like just kind of like, finding what works for you and like trying to throw in more things rather than taking out. So I'm a big fan of like not like, just I'll have a beer in here, there, right? I love there's some like, Colorado, you're right, is great for craft brewing and those kind of micro breweries and stuff like that. Sweets sometimes at night, popcorn. Those are Crystal and I, my wife Crystal and I, we like to catch a movie here and there, a show, and so we'll sit down and I'm big on that kind of stuff. We have like right outside our backyard, like cat corner is a Walgreens, so it's really easy for us to walk. I mean, it's literally paces, and we can go and they always have candy on sale.
Hmm.
So it's like, like you can walk in on a day and be like, holy crap, it's like three for like, $1.50. So we like to keep some of that stuff in the freezer, freeze it up and then kind of splurge on that. So that's a little bit about where I'm at with that. Sweets a little bit.
Okay, right on. Red vines or Twizzlers?
I am a huge fan of Twizzlers, but my wife hates them. She loves red vines, so she's the opposite. So I would buy her sometimes Twizzlers she won't eat them, so I can. But I don't. I'm a more big fan of like some of those more flavored ones now, like the
Yeah.
tropical
Hmm.
Twizzlers and stuff, and even the ones that have that little line of pretty much cocaine in the middle of it, right down the middle, man. It's
Yeah.
like, then I am with the red ones, the regular red ones. So
Right on. Awesome. Appreciate
Ricky,
all of your
yeah.
knowledge and insight and sharing with us tonight, Ricky. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
absolutely, my pleasure, man. I enjoyed it. I thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, your insight, and thank you for responding to a dumb kid from New Jersey back in 2010 when I reached out
Crazy.
about CrossFit and strength training. So thank you so much. We've followed you since then, and keep doing your thing.
Yeah, man. I'd probably send the same response these days, man. especially as a smaller guy, like you gotta get, that's probably the limiting factor for small guys. I would say I would put it behind big guys in gymnastics. Like
Yeah,
little guys have got to get strong. We gotta get strong. We gotta keep trying to work that absolute strength, man. Just get stronger, get
Yeah.
stronger. So
absolutely.
Amen.
Thanks again, sir.
yeah, you're welcome, man. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate you guys. I'll be continuing to follow you guys. You guys got some good stuff and some old friends. Seeing Chan on here and some other people, right? So that just brings back memories. So I'll keep following and spreading the message and getting people to follow you guys as well. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate